Okay, so we're going into part 3. As I said in the last video, this video is going to be about dividend ETFs. So for dividend ETFs, we're going to compare two funds. The first one has a ticker NOBL. Second one, which is again a Vanguard product, has a ticker VAG. Now, because these ETFs are pools of stocks, some stocks pay dividends. So when you're analyzing dividend ETFs, it's going to be especially important to pay attention to the yield. The yield is going to tell you how much you're going to receive in dividend payments as a percentage of the share price of the ETF. So in this case, for each share at $68 and change, you're going to get about 2% of that amount in dividend payments. Now this is annually, so this is each year. Now, as I said in our last video, we're using the SPY, the S&P 500 ETF, as our baseline. So here we have a yield of 1% 3/4. Here, with this ETF, it's higher. We're closer to 2%. With the Vanguard fund, we're actually a little lower at 1.7%. Okay? Now, we also want to look at the performance of these funds. So in comparison, comparing this fund to the S&P 500, even though it has a higher yield, it hasn't appreciated in value as much as the S&P 500. Okay? The Vanguard product has done quite a bit better than this first ETF, NOBL. Although with lower lower dividend yields. Okay. So I'll talk about the Dividend Aristocrats briefly. So if you notice, that's in the title of this ETF. So the Dividend Aristocrats is a index that tracks stocks that have paid and increased their dividends for at least 25 years consecutively. So in general, they tend to be very stable companies. Now, you can also read about the theme or the goals of what each fund is looking to achieve in the fund summary. Okay? So here you can see Dividend Aristocrats and so forth. With the Vanguard product, it's also a dividend focus ETF. However, if we read the description here, so it says, blah, 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 measure the investment return of common stocks of companies that have a record of increasing dividends over time. So in this case, they're looking to include companies in this ETF that increase their dividends. which is similar to the Dividend Aristocrats. Okay. So I think it's also important to touch on the composition of each ETF. So let's say, so they have similar goals, right? These two ETFs, they're both dividend focused. However, they have performed quite differently and they have different yields. So the question is why? You can analyze this by going to this holdings tab and reading what their holdings are. So if you go to the investment company website and you really look for it, you can find what the entire fund is made out of. However, in general, the top 10 holdings tend to give you a pretty good idea of what's in there. Because past the top 10 holdings, you'll generally drop down into small percentages. So like for example here, you're going to be getting into single digits, possibly even fractions of a percent as far as the composition goes. So now if we look here, we'll see that although they have similar goals and objectives for these two funds, what's actually inside them tends to be quite a bit different, right? Take a look at these companies. By nature, you're going to have some overlap here. So for example, this one has Johnson & Johnson. This one also has Johnson & Johnson. However, we have different amounts of that stock inside the funds. So that's a good way to get informed as to why funds may perform differently. Okay, so that's going to cover my picks for dividend themed ETFs. In our next video, we're going to cover large cap stocks. It's going to be coming right up.